Good morning, everyone. My name is Jennifer Hutchins, and I'm the Executive Director of the Maine Association of Nonprofits. And this is another edition of MANP Connects. This is a program that we started in April of 2020 in response to the global pandemic and the subsequent lockdowns that happened across the world to keep people safe. And we wanted to figure out right away, what were we going to do to support our members? And very quickly we said, well, toss out the 2020 work plan and let's start a program called MANP Connects, so that whoever, as people are learning this thing called Zoom, which now is like Kleenex, like you call it by its brand name, right? I'll Zoom you. Then as people were learning, they were gathering online, and we just wanted a place for people from across the state to connect and get information. And most in those early days during the hottest part of the emergency, we wanted people just to get information out. We were doing it weekly. And then we slowed down, but we thought, should we stop? We asked people, they're like, no, this is great. This helps us feel like we're not alone. And hey, it turns out that even when you're not in an intense crisis and emergency, it still feels really lonely working in the nonprofit sector. So we quickly learned that you don't need a global emergency to have the need to feel connected to your colleagues across the state. And I'll tell you, whether it's way down here in York Beach or all the way up here in Fort Kent, the issues are the same. And whether your organization is super big with a super big budget and lots of employees and works across the state, or you're a smaller organization that's all volunteer run, that's protecting a particular little piece of the Maine coastline, the issues are the same. Now, it doesn't mean you don't have other issues that are unique to you, but there are clearly many issues that we can all relate to. And one of them is public relations. And I'm really, really happy that my friends at the Maine PR Council came to me over the summer and said, hey, is there any way we can partner through MANP Connects? Because a lot of our people work at MANP members and at nonprofits. And we are a service organization in addition to being a professional association, and we really would like to get to know the MANP nonprofit members even better. And I was so glad, because I'll tell you a little bit about my background. I actually got to know the Maine Association of Nonprofits many years ago. And I used to do a training called Making the Most of the Media. My nonprofit career started, if you will, in communications and writing and getting out information about a particular mission. And I did a little skill builder, we called them back then, called Making the Most of the Media. And it was all about how to write a good press release and how to be strategic about it and how to get the attention of media. Well, I'll tell you one thing, there's no way in heck I could do that training today. No. First of all, you guys would all chuckle to see the outline that I was doing for Making Most of the Media back in the 90s, I suppose. I didn't bother to count back. But it's changed so much. And then when I was talking with my friends, Kathy and Maureen, about it, we were thinking about just how much it's changed in the last 4 years and since March of 2020. And, you know, totally recognize that there are still many people that are have been impacted and continue to be impacted by the pandemic. And in a lot of ways, a lot of us don't think of the pandemic as being over. And so this felt like a really good time to talk about the responsibility that we have as nonprofits, not only to take care of our constituents, our direct constituents, but also tell our story to everyone beyond that. Because ultimately, those of us who are in the nonprofit community, and I'm talking mostly about the charitable nonprofit community, which makes up the bulk of MANP members, but not exclusively, we also have a responsibility to tell our story to the general public, because that's the deal. As a charitable nonprofit, we are stewards of the public good. And so that means we have stories to tell that are very relevant and to a whole multitude of audiences. Super complicated to do. And so I'm just really excited to have 3 professionals, all from nonprofits in the state of Maine, who are going to be talking to me over the next many minutes about what has changed. I just think it's going to be a fascinating conversation. Before I bring on our first guest, I wanted to share with you one thing I noticed today. I'm going to give a shout out to a friend and a colleague and a MANP member, Anita Ruff. She's the executive director of Oasis up in the Brunswick area. And they provide free medical services for people who can't afford them. And Anita has started doing a column in the Brunswick Times Record about the importance of nonprofits. And Katrina Ruffner, our director of education, is going to post it right here in chat she has for you all to see. And I just want to share that. Katrina shared it with our team this morning, and I thought, hey, this is a really good example of one of the things that I suspect will come up with our guest today is just how much information is out there, both opportunity and overload, right? Like lots of opportunity. And by the way, take a look at this column that she's written, and don't forget about the value of connecting on the socials and giving a shout out to Anita for taking the time to do this work. It's going to take a village. We're a little bit like the Who's of Whoville in my mind, that it's going to take all of us to be shouting in order to be heard. And this is how PR can help, and it's complicated because it's a sea of information out there, and I'm sure Danielle and Maureen and Sarah will all be sharing that with us, is balancing the wanting to be on the socials and engaging and getting our voices out there, but also how do you do it so that you're even heard and so that it's worth your time? All of these issues just swirling around. But I just going to end on the note that it matters. I promise you that it matters. The Maine Association of Nonprofits is doing what we can to advocate for you in Augusta and in Washington, D.C. through our partners on the National Council of Nonprofits. And hearing from you guys does matter. It really matters. And I'll share more information with you about our elections webinar coming up next Friday. So I'm going to leave it at that. And now I'm going to call up my friend, Maureen Duggan Emery, to the screen. How are you this morning, Maureen?
Very wonderful. Happy Friday the 13th to you.
Oh, you had to bring it up.
It's good luck today.
I was just decided I wasn't going to do it, but that's good. I can let you do that. Hey, everybody. Maureen is the philanthropy manager, one of our very important statewide organizations, the Maine Historical Society. She's got a nice reflection of one of the things the Historical Society does, which reminds us all of Maine's historical nautical heritage, which is great. So, Maureen, start us off. What are you seeing that's changed?
Sure. I have had the honor, privilege, joy of working for a number of nonprofits in the state of Maine. And some of them have been teeny tiny and some have been huge. So I first want to recognize that most of the people on this call are working in places where there is not one single person that is in charge of public relations for your organization. Oftentimes you have folks that are doing the fundraising and the communications and the marketing and the public relations, however you define all of those things. So we're also in nonprofits. We don't have the same staff resources, financial resources as people in the for-profit sector. So that's a first thing to consider for us. We do have other restrictions on us, if you want to put it that way. And what I've seen in some places is that sometimes you get a little bit of competition between the people that are doing maybe the fundraising and the PR communications. But what I really want to emphasize is that it has to be a team effort. Everyone in your organization is an advocate for your organization. So really everyone is doing public relations every day that we do our work that we're doing. If you want to, different people again define public relations differently, I would say it's definitely your reputation management. It's going to be the way that you promote yourself and the wonderful work that you do. It's also going to be, sadly, that it's your way to protect yourself if something happens along the way. So I see some great opportunities that stemmed from what happened during COVID, and then also some challenges that we face. So the first thing I want to mention is that during COVID, so many people were home and they really started focusing on what was important to them, whether it was their family, what things in the community. And that actually benefited the nonprofit sector to a degree, because at the time I was working at Maine Audubon, and a lot of people really connected with climate change and the environment, and because they were home and all they had was their backyard. So they were, all of a sudden that was something they were really interested in. And they started investigating into what did Maine Audubon do? And, oh, that's something I can get behind. And I think for a lot of people in direct services, that was very helpful. The challenge there was that people were also nervous about money. So they weren't necessarily going to make those donations. And then for those organizations that rely a lot on in-person, either services or events, that was really tough for people. And then the negative of that is that coming out of COVID, you found that people were a lot more divided on different issues, and had time to sort of have that anger stew. And then things started happening. The increase of social media was a benefit in that you could get your message out faster. You could do storytelling, reach more people that were far away. All that stuff was great. But it also meant that some people were going to post things or say things that weren't true. And if I get any message out today, I would like to say that your organization needs to have a crisis plan, or at least a statement available for in case anything happens, because the last thing you ever want to do in regard to public relations is have the words "no comment" come from someone at your organization. It immediately implies there's some sort of culpability for something. So just to that would be kind of my biggest thing, is make sure you know who's going to say it and what they're going to say. And certainly for any situation, you can change that. But so those are the kind of positives and negatives.
Maureen, have you found, talking about the issue that we have to face with regards to truth in messaging, and
Correct.
how at this point, especially on social media, but anything on the internet, right? I'm trying to teach my kids to be skeptical of everything on the internet. Have you had experience dealing with that directly? And because the one thing I wonder if something is changing is, it used to be kind of back in the day, I remember we would have internal conversations about, is it really worth responding to that criticism? It was a little bit like the word on the street was, if it's not going to really shatter your reputation, then maybe silence is best. But I'm not so sure anymore. And it's
Yeah.
hard to know where that line is about when you say something and say, actually, that's untrue, or that's misleading. We need to correct that. I just wondered if you had an opinion about that.
Yeah, I think that's sort of part of a crisis plan, in that your
Okay.
organization needs to have your vision, mission, all that stuff spelled out and in a place that's available to folks, so that if something like that happens, you have something to go back on and say, well, actually, no, here's this. It depends on what you do. Certainly when I was at Maine Audubon, there were a lot of people that had strong feelings on either side of an issue. And I'll just right now talk about offshore wind. A lot of people are very passionate about that, and they start tossing out information that who knows where they got it. It's not factual. So in that case, Maine Audubon chose to have, a place on their website where they have all of the facts that are available. That's a scientific based organization. There are other organizations where it's people are saying things like, well, I heard that, and then that gets out and then people start repeating it and it's not true for whatever thing it happens to be. And it depends on your organization. So I've gone through that even in a for-profit place where people had a complaint about something, service or what have you. And you kind of pick and choose, but if something starts to bubble, certainly you want to nip it in the bud. And, but there are some things that, and we also, again, don't have the capacity. We don't have somebody that can be on Facebook 24/7 commenting. Another big thing was, well, do you just delete some of those, and really you can't, unless it's certainly something that's offensive or, something like that. But, if people have a thought about something, certainly with customer service, it's best to respond to that if you can. And then also just put up a link to your website that says, for the actual, story, here's where you would find that information.
Yeah, great. So what I'm really taking from you is the best thing especially because we don't have the resources to have someone monitoring it all the time. It's even more important to carve out a little bit of time to prepare for something that might arise. And then that way you can be more thoughtful about how much time you really want to spend on social media. But if something comes up, you've already thought about it in advance and you're not spending a lot of time trying to figure it out. So that's really helpful. We have one more. Can you give me one more tidbit from your experience over the last 4 years that you'd like to highlight?
Yes, I would encourage everyone, no matter what your mission is, that you stay in touch with what's happening in current events, because there's always going to be something that's happening, whether it's in your community or nationally, that your organization is doing something about or with or what have you. Here at Maine Historical Society, for instance, last year, we always feature someone as a Maine history maker. Every year we do that. This year it was Joan Benoit Samuelson, and this was the 40th anniversary of her winning the gold medal in Los Angeles, which was, an epic event. And she's a wonderful Mainer. She does so much with charitable things, what have you. But what we were able to do is kind of leverage what we were doing here at Maine Historical Society with publicity that she was getting everywhere. I mean, not just here in Maine, but around the country and the world.
Right. She's
and
global.
We were able to make ourselves available as a resource for some of those folks. We had actually produced a video about Joan and her whole family, and we just had all the information about her life and what have you. So that was a good way. So I would just suggest that you keep your eye on those things and reach out to somebody, whether it's newspaper, television, a podcast, whatever it happens to be, and say, hey, I can give you some expert information. And the good news about that is that it might not necessarily be something that's directly promoting your organization per se, but then when you do reach out to the media, that same media, they're going to look at you as a resource and say, oh, they called us about that other thing. It would be great to talk to them about what they're doing. So that's
right. So it's all about that relationship building, not necessarily the immediate event that you might be interested in. Well, Maureen, I could talk to you all day. But I'm
And we
gonna,
have.
yes, exactly. But I'm gonna say thank you and please stay on. But now I'm gonna introduce your colleague Danielle Smaha from Preble Street. Good morning, Danielle.
Good morning, Jennifer.
You're doing okay?
I'm doing great. Thank you
Great.
for having me today.
Yeah, I'm really, really grateful for you being here. Hey, everybody. Danielle is the Senior Director of Communications for Preble Street. And she's been willing to come and talk and share a little bit about what have you observed. Obviously, Preble Street has been at the front lines of dealing with taking care of people who need support, not only during the pandemic, but also just in our society generally. And there's been a lot of economic turmoil. So thank you for that and to your team. But so what do you have to, what's some observations that you've had?
Excellent. Well, I appreciate Maureen's comments, and I think she did a great job kind of defining the landscape of what we're seeing as nonprofits in general. One thing that I think I've observed at Preble Street that I'm sure a lot of people can really relate to is that the organization has changed dramatically pre and post pandemic. And as a communications professional, I think a lot of the challenge is trying to bring the community along and see the difference between the types of services and the landscape of the community that we're serving and how that's evolved over the past 5 years. I know, it kind of was the same. I worked at MANP before in communications, and we went through the same evolution too with when the pandemic hit. It was a great time for organizations to take stock. Here at Preble Street, there was a whole new set of challenges for the organization to respond to, and it dramatically changed the organization. Preble Street has doubled in size in the past 5 years. We've added 6 new programs. And so with internal and external communications, that really changed how my job operates in that, I have, 150 new, potential brand ambassadors and people internally to keep informed about what's going on in the scope of the organization, plus trying to educate the public about the issues that we're working on, but also how, different parts of the organization provide services in a different way. I think a lot of people have the impression of Preble Street kind of in that pre-pandemic at the Preble Street Resource Center in the Bayside neighborhood and the soup kitchen. And the organization has changed. The issues that we're dealing with as a community have changed. And there's just a lot of work to do and a lot of information to put out there and to find the different ways to get that information to connect and resonate with the community.
Yeah, and actually, I'm just remembering that I think Mark Swan, your the executive director of Preble Street, was just in the news yesterday, right? Because of the purchase of taking in Bangor, right? Going to be helping with taking that on.
Yeah, so we're planning to take over Hope House, which is the largest low barrier shelter north of Waterville, which was preparing to close its doors, which would have had really dramatic impacts, obviously on the Bangor community, but we would have seen a shift in the number of people experiencing homelessness throughout the state because people would have had nowhere to go. And so it's been, we're getting very close to be able to make a formal announcement as a communications professional. That involves a lot of planning and processes to go through, but we just want to be able to provide that backstop for the community. And
do you have it sounds overwhelming. It sounds like I can hear that it's just full of opportunity and challenge, right? I would guess that the pandemic certainly seems to have really put, as you said, Preble Street was already very much a a critical part of the city of Portland and the region, and now it sounds like even bigger region. But the pandemic really accelerated that, and I imagine there was both opportunity and challenge in that, right? That kind of public exposure brings with it. Do you land on one side or the other, or did you feel like there was more opportunity to tell the complexity of the Preble Street story? Or what about this idea of kind of beating back the naysayers or the people who are twisting the stories, who might not be quite as friendly to your cause?
Yeah, so we try to really focus on the positive. It's always been part of Preble Street to lift up the positive stories. One of the things that we've focused on a lot in the last few years is, how do we create empathy in the community? It's been an interesting few years. We've really been out there and public about the encampment sweeps that have happened in Portland, putting out proposals and solutions, and creating empathy in the community for the people who are vulnerable, who are suffering. And so one thing that we've done is, and I'm sorry I missed your session on it on the last week of August. I was on vacation, but is focus on our ethical storytelling, because we want to be able to work with more people and put out their story. And it was really important for us to be able to, one, give those people ownership of their story. I want to tell the story that they want to tell the community, and also compensate them for their time. And by doing that, we've had more opportunities to, introduce people to people who might have experienced homelessness or hunger or poverty in a way that's authentic. And so that's one thing that we've really focused on.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. It was just so everybody understands, we hosted a webinar where people could learn about ethical storytelling and just how important that is, especially, and I need to remind myself, because I do kind of come from an old school sense of communications. And so I'm so glad you brought that up as a reminder that those of us in the nonprofit community, we see the work that we do and the people we work with, and we do have empathy, and we care so passionately about helping them. But sometimes a reminder that it's the people we work with, it's their stories to tell. And we're here to support that, not to take advantage of that. And so thank you for mentioning that. I think that's a really, really important point. Before I let you go, I'm going to be a little practical. Thank you, Molly. Molly just put in the chat box a great resource on ethical storytelling. I appreciate that. Before you go, do you have an opinion on, I know this is real brass tacks, but I want to help people who, as Maureen said, in small nonprofits, many hats, right? And so how do you handle social media at Preble Street? Do you have someone dedicated to it? Like, do you think of it as a core piece of your PR strategies? And I was just curious if you had a professional opinion of how to navigate that.
Yeah, it's definitely a core part of what we do. Preble Street is on Facebook, Instagram, and I also find LinkedIn to be a great way to connect with the community about what we're doing. We are a small communications team, 2 of us, but we do sit within our development team. So we have support and kind of the back and forth relationship. And so when we look at social media, we're looking to really educate and inform. So it's integrated with, we have a monthly newsletter, and so we're pulling our content from there. We are making sure that we're highlighting any opportunities when we are mentioned in the media. We are looking to share information from our partners on our channel. And as you can imagine, homelessness and poverty are extremely divisive these days. And so there's a wide range of comments that we see on our social media. I do try and, let people have their voice. We try and give people the benefit of the doubt and respond to them in the most positive way possible. Obviously, we you know, anything that is derogatory or harmful or racist, that does get immediately deleted from our social media channels. And that's a really bright line that we draw for how we respond to the public. But we do try and write back and respond and provide people with resources and engagement. And we get a lot of people in the community who are looking for help, reaching out to us on social media too, and contacting us through our messaging. So it's something I think that'll always be part of our strategy, and something we'll always be on.
You bring up a really good point about it. Maybe it hasn't changed necessarily since 2020, but certainly I would imagine having people who are requiring and requesting your services and programs has changed. So it's not just a pushing out, right? Social media, we have to remind ourselves, or I have to remind myself that it's a back and forth relationship, right? And so people are also engaging with us through social media. It's not just a pushing out our message. It's also a receiving important messages, which you know, and when I thank you, Danielle, I am gonna, I really appreciate your time, and ask Sarah to come on, because Sarah Delage, everybody, has direct experience as a news reporter. And so I'm gonna start, and Sarah, I should say, she is the Assistant Vice President of Communications for the University of New England. She's also the president of the Maine PR Council. Thank you for being here. But I'm trying to cram in so much information in a short period of time, which you are super adept at, because you know that you have to tell a story in 2 minutes or less. So I know this is going to be fine. But yeah, talk to me a little bit about that idea of contacting. What's it like to contact the media these days? And it seems like everything has to be in such short snippets, and I don't know, any tips you've got?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to say about what has changed and what really hasn't changed. I think there are fundamental principles about working with the media that have not changed. They, especially when you're working with the broadcast media, they're very deadline driven. They need stories turned around quickly. The more that you can hand deliver them everything they need on a silver platter, the easier their day is going to be, the more likely they're going to want to work with you again, and just the more smoothly everything is going to go. So quickly, I'll just say, when we pitch a story, we want to make sure that we've got 1 or 2 people that can, you know, the people we want interviewed are available. There's one place they can all meet. There are visuals already established. So if we're going to be, say, on UNE's campus in Biddeford in the Marine Science Center, we're going to be able to take them to, you know, the meat of where their story is, to get video of whatever's happening in the lab or what have you. And then sure, go to this one central spot in campus and get the B-roll you need of students walking around and changing classes. So and then even sometimes if it's a story that involves a topic that's not just about your organization, being able to recommend a third party that you know will speak highly of your organization and also offer them another perspective is really helpful. What has changed, I think, is that during COVID, the media had to learn to be much more flexible. There were many, I mean, oftentimes they were reporting on entire stories from their homes. So the idea 5 years ago of saying, I'm sorry, President Herbert's not available to you today. Could you hop on a Zoom and do the interview? I would never have dreamed in a million years of doing that. Today, they do Zoom interviews sometimes even when they don't have to. It's just easier to get that interview done way. And they'll air an interview that looks quite a bit like what we're doing right now on, you know, local news. Similarly with print reporters, they're doing much more work over the phone than they used to. So I am, most of the time when we're working with the Press Herald or another newspaper, we are facilitating a phone interview or a Zoom interview, and then we're separately working with a photographer who is going to come on a set date and time to get photos of whatever the topic is. And then I would also say another thing that has changed a lot is they are much more willing to air video that you give them than they used to. I can't remember which stations are which, but some of them had entire policies where they would not air video that they didn't shoot themselves. And now I think that's mostly gone out the window. They're always going to try to get their own stuff. But I've found in many cases, they're saying, hey, do you have a minute of B-roll of campus that you can send us? So we have that ready to go all the time.
And so is there anything really, I'm just thinking about what my colleagues out there in these small nonprofits need to know is, so when you're reaching out to the media, has sort of the format changed? Like, are we even bothering with a full press release anymore? Or is it better to just say, here's what we can share with you. This is how to reach out to President Herbert, hop on a Zoom, like be that direct about.
I mean, I've always been an advocate for targeted pitches. Targeted pitches are much more impactful than press releases. I think press releases can be effective if you need to announce something and blast it out in sort of like a widespread way. Maine Biz also picks up a lot of press releases because they have a lot of content to fill. So I often am sending out press releases and I'm sending them to everyone, but I know nobody but Maine Biz is going to pick it up. If you have a story you really want to share, pick one journalist who you think, based on what you've seen them write about or cover before, that they would be interested in, and reach out to them and say, hey, I have an interesting story for you that I think you might be interested in. Here are all the elements that I can give you. One of the other things that we often do, and this will be only relevant to people who write their own content for their websites, but we often write the story ourselves, which demonstrates how it could look. And then we say, hey, we did the story ourselves for our own website, here it is, and you can take a look at it and see if you think there's something there for you. But I would say definitely for something you really want to get out there, I think targeted is always the way to go. And that to me has not changed.
Yeah. One thing I will say though is just the change in media. Sometimes it can be hard to figure out who your target should be. I mean, it used, right? Like, or maybe not. Maybe that's just a perception that I have. But when it was sort of like the newspaper was where you went, and the byline was really clear. And now it can be a little bit more elusive. But
and the local news business has always been a revolving door, right? The transitions
good point.
are
Yeah.
lightning fast. It's even more so than it used to be. And it used to be much more established on the print side. I think we're seeing a lot more, I don't want to call it turmoil, but we're certainly seeing a lot of turnover at the Press Herald. I'm having trouble. I had to sort of like very quickly track down an editor at the Press Herald yesterday to correct something. And it was really challenging to figure out who was still there and who wasn't there, and to like just figure out who was going to pick up the phone.
Well, this might be the answer to the question that's in chat for you, Sarah, from Alicia. She's saying when you approach a journalist directly, you're cutting out the assignment editor. How do you handle that?
No, I don't think assignment. Okay, so at TV stations, assignment editors don't get their feelings hurt. I think in print, I think what I've learned is that in print, reporters really like to be directly reached out to. And so I think starting at the reporter level is great. But there are you have to know the station. Some assignment editors are really like on it, and they will figure out the best home for your story. In other places, and I will say like Channel 8 is a great example of that. Sharon at Channel 8 is fabulous. And if you call her and you're like, I've got this thing going on, you may want to send somebody. She'll probably find a home for that story if she thinks it's a fit. At Channel 6, I think it's almost always better to reach out to a reporter directly and just to try to figure out where their interests might lie. And then I would say the same thing at 13. It is just good and often once you've had someone come and do a story with you once, they'll come again because they know you and they just know you're going to deliver for them. They know what they're getting into and they can kind of predict how their day is going to go. But I wouldn't worry about bypassing assignment editors, especially at TV stations.
Great, thank you. So Sarah, we're already coming up at time. I want you to, obviously, this is a great tee up to point out that there's a lot more to talk about. So what can you share with us about MPRC and events that you have coming up?
Yeah, so I think I would, as far as events go, we're deep in the planning stages for our annual conference, which is going to be at USM on November 8th, I believe. And the lineup is already really good. We have Felicia Knight coming in as a local keynote, and then Michael Smart, if anybody's familiar with him, is going to be our second keynote. He's amazing. And it's a huge get that we were able to lock him down. And I would just say, you know, the benefits of membership. Really, you're getting a built-in network of local PR professionals from every sector. And of course, that includes a ton of nonprofit folks because we're such a huge employer in the state of Maine. With membership, you also get a Maine media directory that we try to update once a year. And again, as we've said, it's not going to be perfect, but it's a really good starting point. And then both virtual and in-person professional development and networking events throughout the year. So I think it's a great group to be part of. And we are going to offer a discount for MANP members. So I'll send over a promo code to MANP, and then what we will provide for you folks is to join for free for the remainder of the year, which will get you a discount to the annual conference. And then in January or late December, when the automatic renewals happen, you'll get a $20 discount. So membership is normally $99 for the year. We'll give it to you guys for $79. So we love the organization, and we want to, you know, make sure that we're supporting all of our nonprofit professionals. So
Thank you so much, Sarah. I appreciate that. So one parting tip from your last few years of chaos and mayhem?
Yes. So I think the one thing I would tell everybody to leave with today is, you know, there are a million tactical tips that I could offer for media relations and comms and all of that good stuff. But if I've taken one thing away from the last 5 years and from the pandemic, it's that people who do this work have never been more valuable, and that value proposition has never been more clear to the people who we work for. So if you are not in the room when important decisions are being made, and especially when a crisis is starting to bubble, then you should be thinking critically about how to make a change there. And that changed dramatically for me from you know, when things happened in 2020 to now. And so, you know, organizations simply can't do their work without somebody to properly help them communicate what their messages are, what their goals are. So I would start having those conversations with the people who you report up to about how to get in the room. If it's quietly to start and just to listen, that's a good place to start. But really, communications folks should be at the table when the most important decisions are being made for their organizations.
That's great. Thank you so much, Sarah. And for those of you who work at smaller organizations where you don't have a staff per se, you know, what we talk about is one of the primary roles of board members at organizations is to be good ambassadors in the community. And to be a good ambassador, you have to know what the messages are that you want to be sharing with the public about your organization. So here's our nudge to everyone, no matter whether you're in a big organization with paid communication staff or you're all volunteer with a board of really well-meaning people, is take some time over the next few weeks and months to carve out some time to get organized around your messaging and your communications vehicles. And we do have a business finder on the MANP website where we have consultants who work in this field. And so you can also elect to invest some resources and getting yourself organized around this, because it is indeed, as all three of our speakers have shared this morning, something that's well worth your while with regards to making sure that your mission is serving the community. Okay, we're going to get out of here in 1 minute, folks, but I have 3 quick things. I really need to thank our sponsors, Harvard Pilgrim and Eaton Peabody, who just make it possible for us to continue doing MANP Connects for free for the broader nonprofit community. We'd love that you all show up. We love that we can do this program, and we really love our sponsors, Harvard Pilgrim and Eaton Peabody. As I mentioned, in 1 week, same time, on webinar, we're having on elections and how nonprofits have an opportunity to make sure that you're helping get out the vote. Now more than ever, it's important for all of us to be encouraging our constituency to use their voice. And we know there's data out there that nonprofits in particular have access to people who have been underrepresented and who have been less likely to raise their voice through the ballot box, and nonprofits can help. So come to our elections webinar next Friday, September 20th, and learn about how to do that. And that's going to be our public affairs manager, Mary Alice Scott, who's organizing that and getting that ready for you. So join us. And then here, last thing, drum roll please, really quickly, we are going to do another in-person MANP Connects. If you joined us, thank you, Maureen. I know we're very excited. We had such a fun time at here in Portland last December. We're going to take it up to our friends in Bangor. So those of you who, you know, are in our northern area, guess what? And those of us living in Portland, this is our chance to get up super early in the morning and go north, because all our friends in the north do that all the time coming south. So join us on Friday, November 15th at the Cross Center. We are going to have a morning MANP Connect Summit. It's called From Problem Solving to Possibility. Stay tuned. We're going to be having the registration link coming out to you very, very soon. And we hope you all sign up and come and join us. So that's it. Have a great Friday. Enjoy the beautiful September fall weather. And we're so grateful for each and every one of you. Keep doing your thing, and we've got your back. Take care. Have a great morning.